Hey, 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 Travel Brats. Happy Travel Brat Tuesday. It's Soph coming to you from the studio. And today I have a very special guest. I will be chatting with naturopathic Dr. Erin Kinney. Dr. Erin Kinney is a stress reset expert and a wellness coach. She is the founder of the Stress Reset Formula, designed to help stressed and burnt out individuals overcome adrenal fatigue, boost energy, and restore hormonal balance. Dr. Kinney also works with clients facing challenges such as anxiety, overwhelm, thyroid issues, and digestive concerns. By identifying the root causes of imbalance, Dr. Kinney supports clients in regaining vitality through personalized diet, lifestyle changes, genetic testing, and natural remedies. Dr. Kinney's main goal is to guide her clients to reconnect with their body's wisdom and achieve lasting wellness. Let's talk about how to stay healthy while traveling with Dr. Erin Kinney. Hey, Dr. Kinney, welcome.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. I've been super excited to talk to you. This is one of the first episodes we've ever done on just kind of specific travel wellness and health. And it's something that's so necessary. And so I've just been really looking forward to it. And I just want to kind of go ahead and jump in with you.
Sure, let's do it.
So, I want to talk first about immune health and illness prevention. So, what would you say are some practical tips to avoid getting sick while traveling, especially on planes or in crowded places?
Yeah, well, so there's a couple things. I mean, one, when you are traveling, you have to make sleep and rest a priority, which I know is not always easy to do, but you need to make sure, like, before you go on a trip, make sure that you're not heading into a trip like already underslept, right? You want to make sure that your body is good on sleep. Sleep's the number one thing that will keep your immunity in a good place. But I'm a really big fan of supplements, and I'll tell you some of my favorite, like, general immunity things that are safe for everybody. I really like vitamin D. So with a vitamin D supplement, you can take anywhere from 1,000 up to 10,000 IUs. I typically recommend my patients before they travel, they take 10,000 IUs for a few days before. You can take it through the trip and then a few days afterwards. This is, before you go on a plane. And then the second supplement I really like is zinc. Zinc is fantastic for stabilizing the immune system. It helps, give the white blood cells all they need. It helps to fight colds. And there's a really cool, you can get a liquid zinc, and they call it a zinc tally test. And if you hold the liquid zinc in your mouth and it tastes like nothing, and it tastes like nothing for longer than 20 or 30 seconds, that means you're very zinc deficient, which would mean you need to take a lot of it. If you put the zinc in your mouth and within the first 10 seconds it tastes very metallic, you're probably okay on zinc. So it's kind of cool with the liquid zinc, you can kind of tell like how much you need. But so for zinc, dosing wise, you want to take anywhere from 20 to 30 milligrams probably about a week before you get on the plane. Take it, throughout your trip, and then you can take it a little bit longer afterwards. One thing to note about zinc is if you take a dose around 30 or even a little bit higher milligrams on an empty stomach, it can make you nauseous. So I usually it's best to take with food. Same thing with vitamin D. It's best to take vitamin D with a little bit of fat. It aids the absorption. So zinc, vitamin D, and then basic vitamin C. I'm a really big fan of vitamin C. And so the higher you dose vitamin C, the more like killing action it's gonna have. You can take like 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams, and that will be kind of a basic preventative. But if you really want, like if you know you're going on a flight and it's cold and flu season, you probably want to take more towards like 4 to 5,000 milligrams. Now, if you've never taken vitamin C, I would not recommend taking 5,000 milligrams right off the bat. It will loosen your bowels, so it can, make you have diarrhea. So you're best off starting on kind of a lower maintenance dose and like slowly working your way up. So those are the three big ones that I kind of recommend everyone to take. And then the other thing for not getting sick is hydration. And planes dehydrate us, right? Just life dehydrates us. So making sure that you're drinking plenty of water. And I'm a really big fan of electrolytes, particularly when you're traveling, because if you just drink a ton of water with no electrolytes, you're gonna have to pee all the time, which is annoying when you're on a plane. However, if you drink electrolytes, that's going to help keep the water inside your cells. And when water stays inside our cells, particularly in like the nasal mucosa or in the digestive lining, that's where microbes can easily get into our body. So if we're dehydrated, the little cells that line, they like break apart, they can a little and get these spaces where bacteria can come in. When you're properly hydrated, you have a better barrier against bugs. So hydration, really, really important. But again, electrolytes will really aid in that hydration. I'm a fan of LMNT. It's a brand of hydration packets. They're pretty salty. They actually taste pretty good. They make a whole bunch of flavors, but so that's an easy one. Easy to travel with, throw a bunch in your bag, mix it in your water bottle, and you're good to go. So those are kind of my basic ones. There are other herbs and things. Some of those are not okay for everyone to take, depending on what meds you take or age or any other thing. So I'm usually a fan of just like the basic ones because they're things everyone can take.
Well, I really like that. First of all, I'm really going to start trying zinc. And
Zinc.
then, yeah. And then also just the electrolytes. I love those as well. I'll have to try the ones you told me because I've like had liquid IV, things like that. But, and then the
B is
other,
pretty good. Element, you can also make your own electrolytes with salt and, a little bit of juice, which is pretty easy to do. If you're on a plane and you don't like ask for some salt and ask for a little bit of like apple juice or some other juice, and that will give you some, aid with the hydration. But I do like Element the best out of a lot of the other nutrient or electrolytes.
and for vitamin C, is that you just like emergency packets to bring or?
You can do emergency packets. I mean, emergency is gonna have vitamin C plus some other things, and those are really easy to travel with, or you can, buy a vitamin C supplement. It kind of depends on what you want to travel with. You'd have to drink a lot. The emergencies only have 1,000 milligrams, so you'd have to drink 5 or 6 of those a day to get up to the 4 or 5 a day to get to that 4 to 5,000 milligrams. A capsule is probably a little bit easier to travel with, in my opinion, on that one.
Right,
Those
exactly.
airbornes are actually not bad either. Again, if you forgot to pack those and you're at the airport and you're like, okay, what can I do? They sell airborne almost every, airport, so you can pick up those, and those are gonna hold you over. They have, I think, 2,000 milligrams of vitamin C in there. They have a little bit of zinc. They have some other, they're also an electrolyte, so that's kind of a nice all-in-one combination that you can do.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, I do remember when I was like very diligently drinking vitamin C. I don't think I got sick for like 3 years. So
Yes.
I
Yeah.
don't know why I stopped, but it really
Yeah,
does
I mean,
help.
and vitamin C has other benefits. It's fantastic for your skin. It's what cross-links collagen together. It helps you absorb iron. It's good for your hair, your skin, your nails. I mean, it's a really important thing. We get a ton of vitamin C from our diet, right? But sometimes when we're traveling, depending on where you're traveling, you might not be eating as many fresh fruits and veggies. Again, I don't know. I once took a cross-country road trip when I was in my early 20s, and when you're in the middle of the country, like someplace you stop on the road, they don't have any fresh fruits and vegetables. And I was very glad I had all of my vitamin C supplements because I'm like, I'm definitely not getting any vitamin C. So, sometimes when you're traveling, you might not be eating your regular diet, which leads me into kind of the next thing is gut health is really important when you're traveling as well. And, a lot of my patients are like, oh, my bowels are regular, but I travel and I don't like to go, or I get traveler's diarrhea. So, taking a probiotic with you when you travel can be really, really helpful for the immune system and just to keep you more regular. And if you're traveling through different time zones, that's going to affect your circadian rhythm, which can then affect how your, digestive tract is moving. So again, having a nice probiotic can be really helpful as well.
Right, that's great. And I want to transition a little bit to energy and adrenal health. How could I prevent adrenal fatigue and just maintain energy levels on a busy travel schedule?
Yep. So one, you have to prioritize your rest, right? So and sometimes if you're traveling for work and you're not necessarily like maintaining your schedule, this can be tricky. However, like trying to build in, make sure you do try to get some sleep on the plane. The number one thing you can do for your adrenals is get good rest. And again, I know that's not always the easiest thing to do. However, it is the number one thing to do. The next thing you can do is sunlight. You want to get morning sunlight. So if you're traveling through time zones, like even if you're exhausted, you just want to go and crash in your hotel and sleep until you wake up naturally. It is best to go get at least 20 to 30 minutes of sunlight, best in the morning, because you want to start to tell your body, hey, this is when I should be awake, right? So that's sleep and getting sunlight. Three, I always travel with melatonin, 3 to 5 milligrams, and you want to take melatonin. You can start, you can take on the plane, but you want to take it at the time which you need to be sleeping in the time zone you're going to. And so what melatonin will do is when melatonin is high in the body will know, okay, I'm supposed to be sleeping, and it won't produce cortisol, which means you'll produce cortisol the next morning, right? So melatonin will help kind of recalculate your circadian rhythm, and your adrenals are what control your circadian rhythm. So we can kind of backhandedly do that through melatonin a little bit. which will also help you fall asleep when you're supposed to and get you a little bit more rest. So melatonin, you can also travel with some sort of adrenal support. There are supplements out there that kind of support adrenals. My favorite herbs are rhodiola and ashwagandha. Rhodiola at lower doses can be a little stimulating, kind of wake you up. At higher doses, it can be a little bit calming, but it's a nice thing to take in the morning. And then the electrolytes and the vitamin C that we already mentioned, those are also really good for your adrenals. So if you're doing those on a regular basis, getting good rest, getting sunlight, you're going to be pretty good. And for the sunlight, you need to get outside with mornings without sunglasses. When you wear sunglasses, you're going to inhibit, like, because you want your brain to perceive that there's morning sunlight. If we wear sunglasses, it kind of mutes it a little bit and you don't get the full effect.
Interesting. That makes sense. And when you get back from traveling, how can you make sure your body recovers physically from that trip?
In just in all ways.
Yeah, would it just be a recommendation of kind of the same things or just
It's
getting
the
more
same
rest?
thing. I'm also a really big fan of getting a massage or a lymphatic massage or going, because the other thing, and I'm sure listeners know when you travel, like I get this, I feel like I get bloated and I look puffy and you get off the plane and I'm like, oh, your body's holding on a little bit of water and your system's just a little out of whack. But if you can go get a massage, it will actually like help move, some of that fluid out of you and that helps you detox a little bit. That feels fantastic. If that's not something you can do because of time constraints or whatnot, you can get a dry brush and like brush yourself off. You can look up dry brushing, you kind of brush towards your heart, and that will help stimulate the lymphatic system. And that could feel amazing after a long trip.
Oh, that's really cool. Okay. And then for stress management, just particular coping mechanisms for that. What should I do if I, experience a lot of anxiety or start feeling burnt out or overwhelmed during my trip?
Yeah, so I mean the things you when you travel, and if you travel a lot, there's always going to be stuff that comes up, right? There's going to be stuff that stresses you out. You're going to miss a flight. You're going to lose a bag. You're going to, all the things. You might get something stolen, or you get there at the wrong time, or you can't read the language. There's all kinds of things you can encounter, and that's, I don't know. I like to travel. I think that's kind of part of the fun a little bit. So one, you can have a little bit of a mindset shift, and I think sometimes if you're someone that like always wants things to go how they're planned, going into a trip being like, you know what? Probably something is not gonna go as I planned it. And like kind of trying to have a little bit of a more go with the flow attitude, because you never know. I mean, I've had instances where I've like missed a flight and then randomly met somebody that was, a huge influence in my career or my life. I wouldn't have met them if I hadn't missed the flight. You know what I mean? So sometimes something happens that you get anxious about, but it actually ends up being what was supposed to happen always, right? So I
Right.
think sometimes a little bit of a mindset shift can preempt some of that stress. But I always teach this when I'm teaching workshops and when I'm working with patients. If you're in a state of gratitude, joy, or just fun, you cannot also be in the stress state. So if you have a situation where like, wow, this is really stressful, trying to be like, okay, I'm gonna go do something that makes me feel really good. And maybe, if you're in Europe, you're like, okay, that was stressful. I'm gonna go sit at a cafe, I'm gonna order my favorite beverage, and I'm just gonna sit here and watch people if that makes you feel good, right? Or it could be, I'm gonna go back to my hotel and I'm gonna read my novel for 30 minutes and then I'm gonna like reset. So finding some habit that you like to do that's easy for you to do while traveling and like have that be your little like reset moment. It's trying to bring yourself back to that like calm place, right? Because when we get
Right.
stressed or anxious, we go into the fight flight mode, and that doesn't, it can help you if it's going to help you get out of a situation. Like let's say someone's like chasing after you for your bag, you want to go into fight flight mode to get free, right, or to escape the person. But once that's over with and once you're safe, you want to come back into the rest and digest mode, or like the gratitude, joy, chill mode, right? So it's coming up with, and this is going to be different for everyone, but it's coming up with, hey, what are the things that calm me down? For me, reading a novel is always it. So if I have a stressful encounter, something happens on a trip, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go find a place, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna read for 30 minutes, and then I'm gonna come about my day, from a better place, right? If I didn't do that and you're like, you get all frazzled and then you're like trying to do something else and your system isn't gonna feel very good. And then you're gonna run your adrenals down, you're more likely to get sick and you're not gonna enjoy yourself, right? So,
Right.
so reading, I have a lot of patients that practice meditation, they'll do that, or you could even just do some simple breath work. Some of my favorite breath works are belly breathing, where you just place one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly. You can't see my belly here, but you would breathe in, almost make a pregnant belly, so you get really a lot of oxygen in your stomach, and then breathe out. And that helps bring the blood flow back to, the internal organs and helps digestion get back on track and puts you in that rest and digest state. The other breath work that's really commonly used is something called box breathing, where you would inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and hold the breath out for 4. And you can do that, 5, 10 times, and that will really calm you down a little bit. That's something that's easy to do. Let's say you're waiting in line, or you're about to talk to like a desk agent and you're really stressed out and you're going to be mean. Try a little breathing technique before you go and do that, because that will usually make you nicer, which will elicit a better response from the other person and will probably make your day go better.
Right, exactly. Well, in terms of meditation and breathing, do you ever recommend to any of your clients doing yoga while they're on a trip?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. If yoga is part of it, I mean, anything's part of your regular practice. I mean, or if you're a runner, let's say that you're like, okay, I gotta get up and go for a run. Sometimes it's nice to have a habit that you do regularly at home that will tether you to your travel, right? It's like a grounding practice for you. So if yoga is part of your regular practice, or even if it's not, if you want to practice some yoga, that's great, right? Or if getting up and going for a 3 mile run is something you do almost every morning at home, you may want to get up and do that when you travel, as long as it's safe to run where you are, right? Um, and, I have patients that they do Pilates there, and so they'll like do some of their Pilates exercises, or, they do Taekwondo or whatever it is, whatever like body movement that you want to do that's easy to do in a place that you're traveling. That's always a great thing to kind of help, again, ground your body, which will calm it down, right?
Right. And I want to talk a little bit more about hormone balance when you sleep. How can I balance my thyroid and hormone levels if I'm frequently changing time zones?
Yeah, so it's not gonna directly impact your thyroid, it's more gonna have an impact on your adrenals. Now, when your adrenals get, crashed out, that can then impact thyroid and impact the sex hormones. But so all the things we already talked about are really, it's trying to keep your circadian rhythm, or get your circadian rhythm to match the time zone that you're in as quickly as possible, right?
Right.
So, and I have some patients that will travel, and I've done this myself. If I go to Europe and I'm only there for 2 days, I sometimes keep myself on the time zone that I live in, which is, East Coast time zone. So sometimes like I'll just be like, okay, I'm gonna get there. I'm not there long enough to adjust. So I will stay up late and sleep in late. Or I will sometimes do this if I go to LA for a weekend. I will go to bed really early and wake up early. Like I stay on my time zone. So then when I go home, it's not as much of as an adjustment. Now it's a little tricky to do that because you're not gonna be able to get the sunlight, right? So you might have to kind of like artificially manipulate that. But this is gonna maybe depend on how long your trips are for. Right, so if you're frequently traveling through multiple time zones for short periods of time, that's gonna be the most taxing on your system. Like it's flipping back and forth from time zones rapidly is stressful for your system. If you're going on a 3-week trip, you take a couple days to adjust, that's not really gonna be super taxing to your adrenals, right? It's really the like the frequent quick trips that are hard on. Or, let's say that you're every twice a month you're flying to Asia from the States, that can be a little rough on your system because it's such a big change. And if that is the case, then it's, you've got to double down on your sleep, double down on the stress reducing practices, and there may be a separate, supplement protocol that might be a little bit stronger for someone like that. But so what you're asking is kind of going to depend on like what your travel looks like, right?
Right. Right. And would it be similar advice for keeping cortisol levels balanced with irregular sleep?
Yeah, ask that again. I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
Oh, how can I keep cortisol levels balanced if I have irregular sleep
Yeah, so if you have a regular sleep from travel or just regular sleep in
from
general.
travel? Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, so if you're not sleeping well because of travel, you want to make sure that you're going to get a nap, or you're going to get some sort of other restful, calming activity, right? So if you know, like, hey, I don't sleep on planes, I've got a couple of flights, and I have 3 late dinners, whatever it is, and sleep's going to be short. Make sure you build in recharge time. So think about your body like it's your cell phone, and you need X amount of time to charge a battery, and your battery lasts X amount of time. You can't expect your cell phone battery to go for 4 days without charging it, right? So sleep charges us, but also meditation, rest, reading, anything where the body and the mind are calm is going to recharge you as well. So if you can't get, actual sleep, build in some down and restful time.
Right, right. And in terms of digestive health, what would you say are the best ways to support digestion to avoid bloating when you're just constantly traveling and eating out unfamiliar foods?
Yeah, so we talked about one thing already, the belly breathing that I mentioned. Every time you eat, take 5 to 10 deep belly breaths before food goes in. A lot of times we get bloating when we're traveling is because we're eating on the run. I mean, it can be we're eating foods we're not used to, but a lot of it is you're eating when you're in a fight flight state. And when you're in a fight flight state, there's no blood flow in your abdominal organs, there's no blood flow in the digestive tract, so the food is not able to be digested well when you're in fight flight. So if you're able to kind of hack yourself back into that calm rest and digest state, that will help you, take on food. The other thing you can do is you can take a digestive enzyme with you. Those are fantastic. I pretty much never travel without them. Take a couple of those before you eat every meal. It helps a lot with bloating. If you don't have a digestive enzyme, any sort of like apple cider vinegar, and this is, sometimes like a little bit of wine or a little bit of alcohol as like an aperitif, that can help with digestion as well. Not a lot of wine, you'll go too much and you're gonna go the opposite way, but like a little tiny bit will stimulate the digestion to, start breaking down your food properly.
Okay, yeah. Okay, interesting. That makes sense. And for tips on keeping kids healthy while traveling, how could I help my kids adjust their sleep schedule in a new time zone without causing any major disruptions?
Sure, and kids actually adjust a lot faster than adults. I find I have 5 kids, so we travel a lot, so I see them, like, they'll 2 days and they're like, we fly to Europe and they'll be like, "Oh, we're fine, we're all on the time zone," and they come back and they bounce right back after a couple days, whereas, if I get in a time zone, sometimes it takes me a little bit longer, but, I'm a big fan of melatonin for kids as well, so we always travel, they get, 3 to 5 milligrams, like, again, when they're supposed to be sleeping, and then you just gotta get them up when they're supposed to be up and get them outside in the sun. And with kids and adults too, I didn't really touch on this, is eating every 3 hours is another thing that will help with like adjusting to time zone. So make sure your kids are getting good protein, not a lot of sugar. I feel like I've definitely had trips where we've screwed this up and they're cranky and I didn't feed them enough protein and I fed them sugar all day. That will backfire on you. So don't do that. Make sure they're eating protein and make sure to get them up in the morning. Like particularly if you're going to Europe and you want to get on the right time zone, get them up, get them outside and then they'll be tired at the appropriate time. So, and it usually just takes a couple days with kids to adjust because they're
Okay,
a
yeah,
little
yeah.
slower than us.
And for immune boosting, would you also recommend vitamin C or what would you recommend
These
for the kids?
kids, yeah, I'm a really big fan of the vitamin D, the zinc, and the vitamin C. Um, those are gonna be, probably the easiest. I mean, you can also get your kids like a, gummy multivitamin or something and have them take that, but for really like preventing things, vitamin D for kids is fantastic. And actually, I've just been doing a little bit more research on vitamin D. When kids have low levels of vitamin D, they tend to be more picky eaters, which is no
Mhm.
fun when they travel. So if you want to help your kids like be a little bit more open, you can get their vitamin D levels checked, but give them vitamin D because it actually helps with their palate a little bit. It'll help them like be more open to trying new foods.
Ah, that's really interesting. Speaking of, because you mentioned picky eaters, what snacks or foods do you typically recommend to keep kids' energy up and also avoid the sugar crashes when traveling?
Yeah, so you want to look for, more protein rich. We do, and this is tricky because sometimes kids don't love like super high protein, but we found a few like kind of protein-esque bars that my kids like. They really like layer bars, which are not extremely high in protein, but they taste a little bit sweet, so they like them. We're a big fan of like the meat sticks, like Vermonter meat sticks, so it's just pure protein. You can do beef, a lot of time when you're traveling, beef jerky is available. You gotta be careful with beef jerky, though sometimes they put a lot of additives in there, which your kids might not do well with, so look for the more natural options. Cheese sticks or cheese cubes are good if you have like a little, some way to keep them cold. Again, you wanna go for protein, is if you go for protein-rich snacks, their moods are gonna be more even, they're not gonna get a blood sugar crash, so that's gonna be helpful, and then keep your kids hydrated as well. Really, really important. I'm a huge fan of like my kids like coconut water, so when we travel, we tend to give them coconut water. Sometimes they'll drink electrolytes, but pretty easy to find a coconut water in an airport. They'll drink those, and it's like enough of a sugar, so they feel pretty good there, but it keeps them hydrated really well.
Oh yeah, coconut water is great. It's so healthy. And what could I do to help my kids avoid digestive issues, especially if they are snacking on like high protein things like power bars or high carbohydrate things, maybe, just to keep them from getting constipated or having an upset stomach.
Yeah, so I mean, you can give your kids probiotic too. So when you travel, you can give them that. And another thing I didn't really touch on is if you struggle with you yourself struggle with constipation when you travel, bring some magnesium with you in like a magnesium citrate form. There's a powder you can get called Calm Magnesium, really easy to find. You can put that in a little like plastic bag when you travel. Or they make them in gummies, which you can give your kids, but magnesium, when you dose it a little bit high, it will move your bowels. So that can be kind of like an on-hand remedy that you can have in case you do struggle with constipation. Um, but I find, if you're, it's funny, I don't, none of our kids struggle with that, but kids, again, kids' systems tend to be more resilient. They tend to deal with travel a lot better than adults. Adults tend to get a little bit funny about like, oh, I don't want to poop in a, in an airport or a location. But most kids, if they have a healthy relationship, with their bowels, they're probably not going to get too thrown off by traveling. But a probiotic and a little magnesium can kind of be a part of your kit to make sure that like you don't have to struggle with that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I know you mentioned your kids are not super, super like this, and kids do adjust better than adults sometimes, even. But if you do have a kid that just gets really stressed out traveling or overly excited during travel, how
Yeah.
do you prevent them just getting totally exhausted before it's, say, time for bed?
Yeah, so there's a remedy called Rescue Remedy. It's available in most like this you might have to get before you travel. They have it at CVS and Whole Foods and different places. It's a homeopathic remedy. It just helps like calm kids and adults down a little bit. It's very, very safe. Pregnant women can take it, nursing women can take it, so it's not gonna hurt anybody, but it will just chill their nervous systems out a little bit. But this is also like we do a lot of like kid meditations when we travel. I have one of my daughters is she's more sensitive to travel, like, and she's not a great eater, so she gets a little, her system gets thrown a little more whack, and we use that rescue remedy for her. And we do a lot of breathing with her, and she loves doing the breathing exercises. We do a lot of visualizing before we travel. We'll be like, okay, let's visualize. It's going to be so fun on the plane. It's going to be. We try to like focus more on how fun this is going to be. This is going to be such an adventure. We're going to tell so many stories, and because kids have such amazing imaginations. So, and I find a lot, you know, I see with some of my friends or some patients or acquaintances where if the adult is really anxious, your child is probably going to pick up on that. Probably they are going to pick up on that energy. So making sure you're calm and you're doing the things to keep yourself calm will actually really impact your little one's nervous system. So something you guys can do together, like, hey, like I'm a little anxious about flying. I think it's also healthy to talk to your kids about that. Like, or if they're anxious, hey, let's talk about that. Let's talk about your fears, but let's talk about all the things that could go right. And because, there are a lot of things that can go wrong when we travel, right? There's a lot of unknowns. We can't plan everything. But I think kind of starting to have that conversation with your kids can be really important. And to think about like, well, let's say something does go wrong. Let's imagine what fun could happen from that. Like, say we miss our flight, maybe we'll get to stay in an extra city that would be really cool. I've had that happen before. Where, like, I think the first time I ever missed a flight with my daughters, they freaked out. They're like, "Oh my God, who's gonna get home?" And I'm like, "Well, we're not gonna go until tomorrow, but we're gonna get to go to this other hotel." And they were like, "What? Another hotel, Mom? Does it have a pool?" And then we got to have this whole, and now they still talk about that trip. It was one of their favorite trips, right? So I think it's just
Right,
like switching the flip and trying to see the positive in things, right?
right,
Um,
right.
Now, and if that's something that if you have a child that like that really doesn't work well with, taking a remedy, like I mentioned, that rescue remedy can be really, really helpful for them.
Well, Erin, thank you so much. That was wonderful insight on just how to stay healthy while traveling.
You're welcome.
Erin, lastly, how can our listeners find and connect with you?
Sure. So I'm pretty easy to find. If you look me up on Instagram, I'm at Dr. Kinney. I post a lot of things there. You can also go check out my podcast called The Dr. Kinney Show. We run an episode every week. I bring on guests in the alternative health space. We talk about all kinds of things from, nutrients like we're talking about today, or tips for traveling. We talk about therapy. We talk about, again, all kinds of different things that can help you with your health. And you can also visit my website, which is www.thekinneyclinic.com, which is how I work with patients individually.
Thanks for listening, Travel Brats. Get in touch with Dr. Kinney if you have any questions and check out The Kinney Show. Catch you next Tuesday.